Welcome. This video assignment covers President George H.W. Bush's foreign policy. President George H.W. Bush, also known as Bush 41, felt more at home with working with foreign policy, and why not? He had the experience, and he was the beneficiary of events outside his control. Throughout most of 1989, Bush and the United States watched as one totalitarian regime after another dissolved in favor of democracy. The lone exception? China, whose soldiers fired upon student activists in Beijing's Tiananmen Square. This video assignment takes a look at some of Bush 41's greatest successes, including the end of the Cold War, Panama, and the First Gulf War. End of the Cold War. In Eastern Europe, Mikhail Gorbachev introduced policies of perestroika, also known as restructuring, and glasnost, openness, and urged Soviets for a loosening of economic planning and censorship. Gorbachev wanted to trade with the West, thus he backed off of Soviet imperialist ambitions. The Soviets left Afghanistan in 1989. Then Gorbachev repudiated the Brezhnev Doctrine, which stated the right of the Soviet Union to intervene in other communist countries. This allowed communist rule end in Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, and Bulgaria. In Romania, the people joined the army to depose dictator Nicolae Ceausescu. Then the Berlin Wall came down on November 9, 1989. Using small tools in their hands, Germans opened the borders to the west. The communist government of East Germany collapsed, and a freely elected government came to power. On October 3, 1990, East Germany was reunited with West Germany, and the unified German nation remained in NATO. The Warsaw Pact alliance was dissolved. Gorbachev's reforms affected the Soviet Union as well. He tried to maintain power through a means of creating a powerful presidency, but was forced to succumb to an antiquated economy that resisted change. Gorbachev also had to face the revival of ethnic allegiances within the Soviet Union. Instead of working together, the republics of the Soviet Union wanted independence. As Gorbachev's popularity grew abroad, it shrank within the Soviet Union. On August 18, 1991, a cabal of political and military leaders tried to depose Gorbachev. They accosted Gorbachev at his vacation retreat and demanded that he sign a decree proclaiming a state of emergency and transferring his power to the cabal. Gorbachev's response? Go to hell. After that, Gorbachev was placed under house arrest. But the plotters did not succeed as they lacked effective coordination and had failed to realize the strength of democratic idealism. On August 20th, Bush 41 offered Russian President Boris Yeltsin support and encouraged other world leaders to join him in recognizing a new Soviet government. The news spread that the cabal had failed and the plotters were fleeing. Several committed suicide. Others were arrested. Gorbachev was freed, although he was forced to resign as the head of the Communist Party. Yeltsin emerged as the most popular political figure in the country. The 15 republics declared their independence. Statues of Lenin and other communist heroes came down. The reformers had won, but faced years of hardship and uncertainty as these nations did not have a democratic tradition. Remember George Kennan? Turns out he was right. Time did defeat the Soviet Union. Cold War was ending. In late 1991, Bush 41 stunned the world by announcing that the United States would destroy all of its tactical nuclear missiles in Europe and Asia. It would take its long-range bombers off 24-hour alert status and invite the Soviets to discuss the possibility of cutting the inventory of ICBMs. Bush 41 said that the threat of the Soviet Union invading Western Europe was over. But events in Europe did not end international conflicts. Before the end of 1989, United States troops were deployed to Panama. In 1983, General Manuel Noriega had maneuvered himself as the de facto head of the Panamanian government. In the 1970s, Noriega had developed a profitable business of supplying information on the region to the CIA. At the same time, he had laundered money earned from drug smuggling and gun running through Panamanian banks. The United States found his intelligence useful until he became an embarrassment. In 1988, federal grand juries in Miami and Tampa indicted Noriega on drug charges. The president of Panama, Guillermo Endara, fired Noriega. The pro-Noriega supporters forced him into exile in the Panama Canal Zone and proclaimed Noriega maximum leader. Then they declared Panama in a state of war with the United States. The next day, December 16, 1989, a Marine was killed in Panama. Bush 41 then ordered an invasion with the purpose of capturing Noriega. On December 20th, 24,000 U.S. military personnel struck strategic targets in the country. Within hours, Noriega had surrendered. 23 servicemen were killed in action, and it was estimated that 4,000 civilian lives were lost in what was called Operation Just Cause. In April 1992, Noriega was convicted in the United States on 8 counts of racketeering and drug distribution. And finally, the First Gulf War. On August 2, 1990, Saddam Hussein, the dictator of Iraq, invaded his southern neighbor, Kuwait. His reason? Kuwait had bucked OPEC agreements and had raised its production of oil, thus dropping the price of oil worldwide. At the time, a gallon of gas cost just 75 cents in the state of Texas. At the same time, Iraq was heavily dependent on oil revenues and deeply in debt from the Iran-Iraq War. Hussein was surprised at the backlash, not realizing that it was not a Soviet Union to play off of. Led by the United States, the UN Security Council unanimously condemned the invasion and demanded immediate withdrawal. On August 6, 1990, the Security Council endorsed Resolution 661, which placed an embargo of trade with Iraq. Bush 41 condemned Iraq's naked aggression and dispatched the military to Saudi Arabia on a wholly defensive mission to protect Saudi Arabia. Soon, other nations sent troops as well. After Bush ordered the mobilization of American reserve forces, the mission became Operation Desert Shield. By January 1991, over 30 nations had committed to the operation. But Iraq still refused to yield, claiming Kuwait to be their new southern province. On January 12, Congress authorized the use of U.S. armed forces to dislodge Iraq from Kuwait. When the first Allied cruise missiles began to hit Iraq on January 16th, Operation Desert Shield became Operation Desert Storm. Hussein expected the fighting to occur in Kuwait, thus he left his border with Saudi Arabia undefended. On February 24th, 200,000 coalition forces invaded Iraq from Saudi Arabia, outflanking Iraqi troops. The coalition forces were led by the United States General H. Norman Schwarzkopf. The ground assault lasted only 4 days. Iraqi soldiers surrendered by the thousands. On February 28th, Bush 41 called for a ceasefire and the Iraqis accepted. The coalition forces occupied 20% of Iraq. American fatalities in the First Gulf War, 137. Iraqi deaths in the First Gulf War, 100,000. In mid-1991, Bush 41 seemed unbeatable because of his foreign policy. His approval rating was at 91%. It seemed that Bush would win re-election. But then, by 1992, Bush seemed out of touch in foreign policy. Kuwait was freed in the aftermath of Desert Storm, but Saddam Hussein remained in control of Iraq. On Christmas Day, 1991, the Soviet flag was replaced with the flag of the Russian Federation. The Cold War was over. Containment had lost its reason for being, and suddenly Bush 41 seemed out of touch. Thank you for watching this video assignment on Bush 41's foreign policy, and may the force be with you.